Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren on Facebook had a Q&A yesterday on healthcare. They're talking about the bill, but even still, they're having to do it hypothetically. And it's much harder to do this. So it's all about the bill that came out of the House. They can't talk about the bill that came out of the Senate because nobody knows what's in it.
I'm going to talk about today with you, because we invite your questions, is the crisis in healthcare right now and what the Republicans are doing. And there are two main areas that I want to chat about briefly before I give the mic over to Elizabeth. And that is, number one, healthcare today constitutes about 1/6 of the American economy. Obviously, it is an issue that impacts every single American. And we can disagree about healthcare. I have my views. Elizabeth and I share a lot of views together. Other people have different points of view. It is hard for me to understand how any member of the United States Senate thinks it is acceptable to go forward without any open debate on the Republican Senate proposal. Elizabeth and I are both on the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee. Elizabeth, how many hearings and discussions have we had regarding the current Republican Senate proposal on health care?
Zero. None.
Zero.
None.
None. Okay.
None.
So an issue dealing with 1/6 of the American economy, impacting hundreds of millions of people, zero hearings. The reason for that is fairly obvious. If you have something that you are proud of, if you have something that you think will do the American people some good, you know what? You want to get that word out, don't you?
Yeah.
But if you have something that stinks to high hell, that will decimate the lives of many millions of people, you want to keep it as secret as possible.
This is about cutting taxes. This is not a health care bill. This is a tax cut bill. And the only way they can pass this tax cut bill is through reconciliation, which involves 51 votes. And the only way they can use reconciliation is if this is deficit neutral. So to cut taxes, they have to cut services. And it just so happens there's this big service out there called the Affordable Care Act, Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And that's what they're going to cut because that's what their constituents want.
I always bring this up. Several weeks ago, we played this clip when I was hosting of Paul Ryan's tax advisor. And it was one of these clips that a certain kind of like centristy pundit loves to grab because they're like, oh, see, there's still sane Republicans. Because the story at that time was that this was before the House passed health care, when they had failed. And the report from the White House was Trump just wanted to drop it and do a tax cut because it would be more popular and easy to pass. And Ryan's guy at a forum in D.C. was like, that's unicorn thinking. We can't have tax cuts without dealing with health care. And people jumped on it like, oh, that's so great of him to have a reasonable cover. And it was like, no, he's actually showing you the sociopathic intentions of these people, which is that, no, step by step. First, we decimate the social safety net, throw millions off of health insurance and into poverty, and then we give money to rich people. Well, it wasn't a moment, and he's right, but it wasn't like a moment of rational enlightenment.
No,
he was showing you their strategy and how
it
works.
Was a practical prescription.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't cut taxes without cutting the services because we don't have enough votes to do it the way that you're talking about.
It must be really bad, too, for Bernie to share a platform with a woman.
That's hard.
Because he's such a, like, all right, I'll sit with Elizabeth and pretend I care about her opinion.
I keep saying, this is not a health care bill. This is a tax cut bill. And here is why. These reporters from Vox went and asked Republicans in the Senate, what are you trying to do with this bill? Right? It's ostensibly a health care bill. They cannot cut taxes without the votes. They need to do it through reconciliation. You can't do it through reconciliation in the Senate unless it's deficit neutral. So you must cut something. And for them, Medicaid, essentially, and other provisions of the Affordable Care Act are the easiest things to cut. Why do we attack Iraq? Because that's what everybody agreed upon. It was the easiest thing we could have done, as Thomas Friedman said. And the idea is not to fix healthcare. Exhibit A, Tara Golshin from Vox interviewing John McCain. Vox, generally, what are the big problems this bill is trying to solve? John McCain, almost all of them. They're trying to get to 51 votes. Vox, Tara Golshin, policy-wise, what are the problems in the American healthcare system this is trying to solve? And is that bill doing this right now? John McCain, well, it's whether you have full repeal, whether you have partial repeal, whether you have the basis of it. It's spread all over. Tara Golshin, no, but based on the specifics of the bill you've heard so far, is it solving the problems in the healthcare system? John McCain, what I hear is we have not reached consensus. That's what everybody knows. Tara Golshin, right, but outside of getting the votes, from what you hear of the actual legislation being written, is it solving the problems you see? It's not being written because there's no consensus. But generally speaking, what are the big problems it's trying to solve? You name it. Everything from the Repeal Caucus, which, as you know, have made their views very clear, Rand Paul, etc. And then there are the others on the other side of the spectrum that just want to make minor changes to the present system. There's not consensus.
Minor changes to the present system.
In other words,
that is the most disingenuous thing he said in the whole exchange.
Well, there are some people who are basically in favor of, like, let's just call it Trump care.
Well, Collins and Murkowski maybe, but that's not something that's really on the table.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's what I meant by disingenuous. That's not happening.
But the point of this is he can't even answer what the problem is with the existing thing and what this legislation is aiming to fix because it's a tax cut. Jeff Stein from Vox talks to Chuck Grassley. I want to ask you a very broad question. What do you think this health care will accomplish that will improve America? What's the positive case for this bill? Grassley. Well, I can tell you what it's going to do for Iowa. We are one of those states that in a couple of weeks, if the insurer Medica pulls out, we'll have 94 of our 95 counties won't have any insurance, even for people who have the subsidies. That's what we have to concentrate on now. So at least Grassley now is stating like, hey, there's a problem. Here's the problem. So Jeff Stein says, how do you think that bill will fix that problem? Grassley, well, by bringing certainty to the insurance market. They don't have certainty now. Stein, by bringing certainty to the insurance market? What certainty? Grassley, what? What do you mean by certainty? Well, they can't even file. They have to check the rates real high if they don't know what the government policy is. And so the certainty is that passing a bill gives the health insurance companies certainty. Jeff Stein, but wouldn't not passing a bill also do that? No, yeah. It gives them certainty that you'll have a lot higher rates than if you pass the bill. So you're saying the bill will lower rates? If you're talking about lowering the rates from now down, no. The rates could be way up here. And if we get a bill passed, it maybe wouldn't go up or would go up a heck of a lot less than they would without a bill. By rates, you're talking about premiums. Yeah. Premiums. Yeah. I'm sorry, I have to go.
I can see why they want to ban reporters from the halls.
The reason why rates are going through the roof now is because the president keeps threatening to cut off subsidies, which is not to say there aren't affordability problems with the Affordable Care Act. Without a doubt, massive ones that public options would certainly help mitigate to some extent. But the idea that the Affordable Care Act, that this is going to be improvement on the Affordable Care Act, nobody's even making that case. Because this is a tax cut. Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos